Today I'm looking at another book from the Golden Cockerel Press. This is The Lottery Ticket by V.G. Calderon, and it was published by the press in 1945. This was Calderon's second Golden Cockerel Press book, the first having been The White Llama. This was published in an edition of 400. 300 of those were standard copies and 100 were specials, and this is one of the specials. You can tell that because it has this quarter white Morocco over yellow cloth. The standard edition was full yellow cloth binding. Both editions though shared in common this gilt design with a bird perched upon a top hat, and on the spine we have the title also blocked in gilt. The top edge of the text block here is also gilded. Then we can open the book up. We come to the end leaves. The first thing we see here on the end papers is stamped here, bound by S&S London. That's Sangorski and Sutcliffe, the famous London binding firm. And the paper in this edition is Batchelor's handmade paper, which was a common choice for Golden Cockerel. And like many of the books of this era, it's a relatively coarse paper by modern standards, so that makes the book feel not particularly refined, but definitely has that craft quality and gives it a certain tactile quality when you're handling the book. This book is typeset in 13-point Bembo, and it's a really short book. We have only 14 pages in total, that's the whole book here, and of those 14 pages, only 3.5 are text pages. So it's a really short story. That story is about a person of colour who rejects Western customs as an act of protest against past crimes against people of his race, only to have the Westerners turn on him and commit the same sort of crime against him. It's really quite a shocking story, perhaps a little bit offensive even to modern sensibilities, but for just a 3.5 page story, that means it also has quite some power and impact. The engravings, though, for me were the main reason to be interested in this book. You could see here we have engravings by Dorothea Braby, and she has produced several of those for this book, so you can see 2 of them here. For the title page, then we have a third one here, a 4th, here's a 5th, and here's engraving number 6. So 6 engravings in a book of 14 pages means that while it's a short story, at least we get a full complement of illustrations. Now, we've seen the work of Dorothea Braby before on this channel when I took a look at this book. So this is Mr. Chambers and Persephone, and on that occasion I said I liked the engravings very much, and one thing I pointed out as having liked about the engravings in this earlier edition was that Braby had managed to take really quite organic shapes and make them flow together with these very seamless transitions, which really to me gave the illustrations a lot of visual interest. And you can see the same kind of thing going on here. So here in the frontispiece, for example, you see that we have some hands that merge seamlessly into what look like tongues of flames, which in turn merge into the lines of this woman's body and ultimately into this head that's reclining in the background. And the way that all of this fits together in an illustration I find quite clever. Also, good use of light and shade in these illustrations and a lot of drama, which is another thing that I think makes them quite interesting to look at. So I have another book illustrated by Dorothea Braby from the press, and that is this one here, which I haven't reviewed yet. So this is Gilgamesh, King of Erech, and this is also illustrated by Dorothea Braby. And one reason I think this is interesting is that this is ever so slightly later, and you see a slightly different style here. So these are these densely black line drawings with these white lines, and you can see elements of that coming through here also in the lottery ticket. So this illustration here on the right is somehow a bit of a blend between what we'd seen before in Mr. Chambers and Persephone, with these delicately shaded human forms, and then these more stylized illustrations that we see later in Gilgamesh. I also have here a copy of Cockalorum, the Golden Cockerel's bibliography, and so we can turn to entry number 164, the lottery ticket, to see what Christopher Sanford, the proprietor of the press, thought about these engravings that he'd commissioned. He says the artist now agrees with me that the visual punning in the engravings, by which I think he means this seamless transition of forms that I talked about, was a mistake. So he did not really approve of that. He didn't share my enthusiasm for it. And unfortunately, neither, it seems, did the Times Literary Supplement. They described the engravings as lacking something of substance. So it seems like I'm kind of on my own in liking these engravings quite so much, but to me they were the main reason to buy this edition. Then at the end of the book here we have, of course, a colophon. It's numbered by hand. It tells us that this is limited to 400 copies. And that's about all there is to it. So this is a super simple edition, but I found it quite a nice exercise in book design in total.